Hey, what's up guys? It's LDJ Writes here and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm a science fiction and fantasy writer who is currently working on a large-scale world-building project with all of my books that I call the Eternal Keyverse. I've kind of decided that I'm going to start mentioning this in my videos a lot more because it's something very unique that I feel like not that many people are doing. So yeah, that's me. This video is heavily inspired by Anna Nu's recent video where she recapped her entire 2024. She talked about everything she wrote, everything she accomplished, and reflected on the year and stuff like that. So I saw that video and I was like, hey, that's like a really good idea to kind of, put the whole year in like a little time capsule. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be breaking this video down into 3 parts. Those 3 parts are going to be my writing recap of the year. I'm going to talk about every project that I wrote. And then from there, I'm going to be talking about my favorite things from each of those projects that I wrote. Going to be talking about my favorite characters, my favorite settings that I wrote. I'm going to share some lines from those projects that I really enjoyed writing and stuff like that. And the third and final portion of this video will just be me reflecting on 2024 as a whole. I'm going to be talking about my writing journey, my YouTube journey, and may touch on my goals for next year. But that also may be another video. But yeah, that's enough introductions. Let's get into my writing recap of 2024. So when I was researching and developing ideas for this video, I noticed that I did not do a good job of tracking how many words I wrote every month. In fact, I don't think I tracked any month except for July when I did Camp Nano. So I'm not gonna be able to precisely pinpoint how much writing I did in this month or in this month. But I am able to kind of break down my year in chunks of months based on which project I worked on. From January to April, I worked on this action adventure comedy / alternate history novel that I call Henri, Beck and the Hidden Library. This specific book is about the Beck family who are descendants of a long line of adventurers, anthropologists, historians, and explorers. The book centers around the Beck's youngest son, Henri Beck, who is on a quest to find the lost library of Alexandria. And I really enjoyed writing this book. I first started writing this book in 2022 actually. I just finished it in April of this year. And yeah, that was the first project I wrote for this year. Took up most of Q1. And then from there, I worked on my second project of the year, which was the Ivory Crypt, which is the 5th and final book in my fantasy series, The Eldenarian Artifacts. I'll probably be making another video detailing more about this book and the series as a whole because this is the project that I'm going to be jumping into next now that I'm finished with Court of Rooks. Speaking of Court of Rooks, it took up half of my entire year. After I took a break from writing the Ivory Crypt from May to June, in July, I started work on my newest novel, Court of Rooks, which is a mystery thriller novel set in my own fictional city of Black River. The main character is a Detective Dominic Alter, and it's basically him trying to track down a serial killer who has been targeting high-profile and corrupt individuals in the city of Black River. And if you guys want to learn more about that book, you can check out this playlist where I have all the videos where I worked on and talked about this project. But I started that in July for Camp Nano, and I just now finished in December. So all in all, I worked on 3 projects this year, and that's pretty standard for me. I'm thinking about other years. I think one year I wrote 4 books in a year, which was kind of crazy, but about 3 to 4 is about how many projects I tend to work on in a year. So for 2025, I'm hoping to keep that up, but not sure if I'm going to be able to, but we'll see. Now, moving on to my writing favorites of 2024. Out of the 3 projects that I worked on, Court of Rooks is going to have to be my favorite one. I love every project that I work on, of course, but Henri, Beck and the Hidden Library was a bit of a slog for me to get through just because I had been working on it for 2 years. On and off, of course, but I was just really happy to be done with it. And I would say the Ivory Crypt was my favorite, but I only wrote 7 chapters. I wrote 22,000 words of that. So I can't really say it's my favorite, even though I really love what I have so far. I can't really say it's my favorite. So Court of Rooks kind of gets it by default. But even if I had finished the Ivory Crypt, I might have still said Court of Rooks, because Court of Rooks really challenged me. I stepped out of my comfort zone and wrote in a new genre that I'm not really used to, and I just really love the character work I did. I love that I created a whole fictional city for it. Like I've created fake settings for my other novels and stuff, but like I really created a whole city with its own culture, its own, like, there's different boroughs and different people, and it's like the city is its character in its own right. And I really love that about the book, amongst other things that I won't touch into because those will be spoilers. But yeah, Court of Rooks, definitely my favorite project that I worked on this year. And my favorite characters that I've written this year would have to be Henri from Henri, Beck, and the Hidden Library. As a character, I feel like I still need to figure him out, but it was my first time writing a character who is not the same sexuality as me. He is gay, and that really helped me kind of broaden my perspectives of writing different characters and like writing different romance types, I guess, because I'm not a great romance writer. I won't pretend to be, but like I did enjoy writing that story. I enjoyed the plot of that. I loved researching about the Library of Alexandria and just the history of Egypt and like all that stuff. If you guys are interested in reading that story, actually, I have a bunch of chapters of it posted on Wattpad. I am in the process of putting the rest of them up there because I did finish that book this year. But yeah, if you guys want to check that book out, you can find it here. There'll also be a link in the description for all the books that I mentioned in this video. Moving on from Henri, I also enjoy writing about Sebastian always. He is the second point of view in my fantasy series, the Eldenarian Artifacts. My main character in that series is Michaela, and I do love Michaela, but like she's a little hard to write sometimes. And Sebastian is also hard to write sometimes, but I really enjoy his character because I modeled him after Zuko in the beginning, Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I just really love kind of like the disgraced son who tries to win his father's approval and then eventually realizes that he never needed his father's approval in the first place. And he just really mirrors Zuko a lot in a lot of ways, but he's also very different. And I just really love what I'm doing with his character arc in the 5th and final book, because he has taken on this leadership role that he does not completely think he's ready for, but everyone else is kind of pushing him into it. And he's got expectations of the prophecy and just the weight of his entire civilization of people on his back. And he's really kind of struggling with that. And I'm really excited to see where his character goes and where he ends up at the end of this series. So yeah, love writing about Sebastian. Other than Sebastian, in Court of Rooks, I loved writing about Dominic, and I loved writing about Morgana, my deuteragonist? I don't know how to say that word, but like my secondary protagonist. Really loved writing about them, and I also loved writing about the villain in that book, the Grandmaster. I won't say their real name because that'll be a spoiler, but I loved writing about the Grandmaster, the serial killer who has been killing all of the corrupt people in Black River. Loved writing about those three. I think they're some of the more interesting parts about my book, which I would hope so because they're the main characters. But I think they're all very interesting characters in their own right. They're both because I'm talking about 3 people. All 3 of them are very morally gray, and you can kind of understand their motivations for doing certain things, even if the things that they do are not always good. And that was also a little different for me because I write about superheroes and like wizards and stuff usually. So most of the time it's good versus evil. In Court of Rooks, it was kind of gray versus gray versus gray. So it's not really a good versus evil, because on one perspective you might think my main character is on the dark side, and you may think the antagonist is actually doing something noble, and you flip the script and you think the opposite. So I really loved that dynamic of Court of Rooks, and I loved writing about those 3 characters. And my favorite setting that I wrote about has to be Black River. I really just built up a whole city from the ground up, and if you guys want to know how I did that, you guys can check out this video where I show you how I created my city from scratch using my Obsidian template. I also wanted to get into some of my favorite scenes from my projects that I worked on. I won't be too long-winded on this, but I haven't really read any lines from any of my novels on this channel that I think, but gonna give it a shot in this video. So yeah, we're gonna start with Henri Beck in the Hidden Library, and my favorite lines are as follows.
Hey, Malik? Yeah. Henri paused. Malik lifted a brow at him. Do you? He cleared the shakiness from his throat. Do you ever feel lost? Like you don't know what you're supposed to be doing? You're seriously asking me that? Malik laughed. He moved from his side of the tent and joined Henri in front of his bed. I've been lost ever since I blew my shot at making the NBA. Hell, even before that. I've been lost since my pops died. Henri silently chastised himself for forgetting. Malik might have been the only person who was more lost than him. Since I was a kid, I thought I was going to make it big, man, Malik said. Me and Pops, we'd wake up at 4 in the morning to put up shots in the gym before school. We had this whole plan. I was going to play Division I basketball, catch all the scouts' eyes, and get drafted in the first round. Was going to take Pops with me to whatever team I ended up on. And it almost happened. Then he died. He was the nicest man in the world, and he got gunned down in the street like a dog. For a long time, I was so angry, and I let that anger take everything from me.
Now, that's one of my favorite lines from this specific book, and it's from the point of view, it's mostly spoken by Malik, who is the secondary main character, I guess, or I guess he would be the tertiary main character, but he is the main love interest for Henri, and his background is that he was a rising basketball player in his state until his father was killed. He spun out into depression and ended up losing his scholarship and, lost his dream at becoming a professional basketball player. And then he ends up meeting Henri and they go on this adventure to Egypt and they find the library together. And I just really love this specific line of dialogue because it delves into who he is as a character and just shows you that grief hits people in different ways. And that was one of the main things I tried to explore with his specific character. Now, moving on to the Ivory Crypt, I've only written 7 chapters of this specific book, but I'm going to be sharing 2 lines. The first one is literally just 1 line, and it's from the prologue. It's literally the last line of my prologue. I won't say whose point of view it's written in because it's a spoiler, but I will read the first line now.
The Black Lotus was the king of this hellish place, but kings can't live forever.
That's one of the main themes of this specific book. And I'm going to leave it at that. That's just one of my favorite lines that I've written just because of what it means. And I love that it's the last line of the prologue, specifically because it's not being said, it's prose, but in whose point of view it is. I think it's just so monumental for the whole series and specifically for what the Ivory Crypt is going to be about. And then moving on to a longer scene, which is from chapter 1, it's detailing my main character, Michaela's memory of the night that her guild of light magicians were murdered.
The destruction outside seemed like it'd never stop, but eventually, the fighting did come to a halt. A chilling silence followed, its haunting nature wiggling its way through the cracks and crevices in the wall. It filled up Michaela's room like the smoke choking the sky outside. It slithered up and down her limbs, threatening to crawl into her mouth and stifle the air from her lungs. Tears welled in her eyes as she hiccuped. Her mouth trembled as she stared at the door across from her, silently praying her parents came bursting through. Footsteps boomed on the other side of that door, the sound inching closer with every second. Her breath hitched as fear held her down to the floor. All she could do was scream as that door swung open.
And it cuts off right there because she wakes up from the dream that she was experiencing, but that's also one of my favorite little passages. It's very dark, and it's my first time that I actually delved into Michaela's backstory because up until this part in the series, we don't really know what happened to her family. There's bits and pieces that I throw in throughout the books, but we never really see what happens to her family on that night that all the light magicians were purged from the planet. And I think that's just a good bit of world building that I did. I really love some of those lines in there. I was reading it back a couple days ago and I was like, wow, I can't believe I wrote that. But yeah, that's probably my favorite passage from the Ivory Crypt so far. And last but not least, we're going to get into my favorite passage from Court of Rooks, and it comes from the climax. I'm not going to give too much background because it's also a spoiler, but yeah, let me just get into the lines.
He had to make a choice. His mother's words from yesterday returned to him. Remember who you are. Remember who you want to be. For years, even before Atticus's death, he'd felt as if he'd lost himself to the city. Finally, he remembered who he was. He remembered who he wanted to be.
Now, this is spoken in Dominic's point of view, and it's really just him reflecting on everything that's happened up to this point. He's had a heart-to-heart with his mother, who he was estranged from up until this point, and this is kind of just him in his internal monologue right before he faces the Grand Master at the end of the book. And I just really love this because it really encapsulates his character arc throughout the book. When we start with Dominic at the beginning of Court of Rooks, he has fully lost himself. He does not know who he is. He feels like he's lost his identity to the city, to the corruption, to everything that he's done up until this point. But at this point in the book, he's kind of coming around to forgiving himself and becoming the person that he always wanted to be. So he's remembering who he was and he's remembering who he wants to be. And I think this is just, it really encapsulates his character arc and his character growth and who Dominic is as a character. And I just really love these lines. I recently wrote them and I just like, they're pretty simple. There's nothing crazy about them. There's no like crazy similes or metaphors here, but I just really like what I did. It's a callback to something that happens earlier in the book. And I just really like what I wrote here. But yeah, those are my writing favorites from 2024. If you guys have any lines from your novel or whatever project you're working on that you would like to share, drop them down in the comments. I would love to read them. Now let's move into part 3 of this video, which will be my reflections of 2024. Now, 2024 was a pretty important year for me. Non-writing related, I went back to college after taking about a 2-year break. I took a break when COVID first hit. I don't think I've said this before, but I used to go to Howard University, which is an HBCU in Washington, D.C. When COVID hit, my whole life kind of was thrown off track, and I decided to take a break from school to kind of focus on what I wanted to do and to kind of just get like my life back in track. So I transferred from Howard. I'm now going to a school in my home state of California, and I've now finished my 2nd semester there. I have 2 semesters left, and I'm kind of thriving. I can't remember exactly what my GPA was for this most recent semester, but I got 4 A's and 1 B- in critical reasoning, which is crazy because I think I'm a good critical reasoner, but that's besides the point. What I'm trying to say is 2024 was a big year, and I think one word that I would have to use to describe it would be change. I experienced a lot of change this year, for good and for worse, but mostly for good. Now let's get into some things that I learned this year. One thing that I learned about myself is that staying motivated is very tough. For me, I get a lot of random bursts of inspiration to start different projects and to try out new ideas. And eventually, for me at least, that inspiration dies out kind of quickly and it leaves me with either half-finished products or promises that I'm unable to fulfill, and I really want to stop doing that. I've really realized that about myself, and I hate starting things and not finishing them, but I do it so often, and I really want to try and not do that. So that's something I'm going to be focusing on next year, and I'm just going to be focused on being more disciplined, having more structure, being more organized, and actually finishing the things that I set out to do. Secondly, I learned that testing yourself as a writer is very important. In my opinion, writing is almost like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger you get, and you want to be versatile because if you keep writing the same thing over and over, you're not going to grow anymore. Just like if you keep doing the same workouts over and over again with no variation, you're not going to get stronger. So for me, I decided to challenge myself with Court of Rooks, and I'm really glad that I did that because I feel like it's helped me become more well-rounded as an author. I've learned different writing styles, different plot structures. I've learned how to write different characters, so I feel like I can take all of this into my next project, which will help me make it even better than it could have been beforehand. Next up, I learned that I was born to create things. I've been writing stories since I was 8 years old, and I've taken that on to even now, 16 years later. I'm 24 years old, and it doesn't even have to be stories that I like to create. I think I was just born to make things, whether it's writing, whether it's graphics, whether it's YouTube videos, whether it's anything. Honestly, I just like making things. And that's one thing I think I really learned about myself this year. And even when I took my short hiatus from this channel, I felt the itch to make videos and to write. And even when I was demotivated, in the back of my mind, I was like, I really need to be making something. And I'm glad that I'm getting back into it now. I'm getting back into writing and making videos now because I really just think I need the creative outlet to make things. And that's kind of been my whole, motivation with the whole Eternal Keyverse, my shared universe with all my books and stuff, because I want to create something that kind of lives beyond me. Because it would be so cool if I could have this thing exist and even after I die, people are reading about it, and it kind of immortalizes the thing that I've made and immortalizes me in a way. Because I think everyone, in a way, wants to be remembered for something. Mostly something good, hopefully. But yeah, that's kind of my whole motivation. I want to create something that lasts forever, ideally. And yeah, I think that's why I'm a writer, and that's one thing I also learned about myself this year. And lastly, I learned that putting myself out there is not as scary as I once thought it would be. Now, this is not my first YouTube channel. In fact, I have a gaming channel that I used to post on when I was in middle school, and I even tried posting on it 2 years ago with some other kind of videos. I haven't posted on there in 2 years. I'll throw the channel up on the screen if you guys are interested in checking out whatever I do have up there. Maybe I'll start posting different video games when I have the time, but no promises on that. But the difference between that channel and this channel is the first time that I actually put my face in the videos. I had never done that before. My other videos were all just voice and stuff, which is a lot less scarier than putting your whole face on the internet for everyone to see. And before I started this channel, I was deathly afraid of doing that. I kind of have a lot of self-image issues that this YouTube channel has actually helped me overcome greatly. So I say all that to say, putting myself out there was not as scary as I thought it would be, and I implore all of you guys to try and do the same. Now, you guys don't have to start a YouTube channel if you don't want to, but I would think, sharing some things about yourself on the internet to your community can be a good thing. You can find your friends out there. Like, I found some pretty nice people through this whole AuthorTube thing, and I'm really glad that I, took the chance on myself and started a channel, which grew pretty quickly, like more than I thought it would in the couple of months that I was posting videos. Like, I never thought I would be here almost at 800 subscribers just after 6 months of making videos. I only have 30 videos. So like, imagine where I'll be when I hit 100 videos, or, just imagine where I'll be in a couple of months. And that's all because I took that first step in putting myself out there. Even recently, I submitted my novel to a publishing competition. A couple of months ago, I might have not have had the courage to do something like that. And yeah, I just really think putting yourself out there in a positive way is something that everyone should strive to do, because it'll only help you get better as a person. But yeah, those are the main 4 things that I learned about myself this year. If you guys have anything that you took away from this year, or learned any life lessons, or just learned anything about yourself in general, or even about the world in general, leave them down in the comments, as I'm sure they could help me and they can help anyone else watching this video too. Now, moving on to the things that I succeeded at this year. I successfully wrote 2 books, which is kind of a big accomplishment. Now, I wrote 2 first drafts, still got to go back and edit them, but I finished 2 books, and that's about 200,000 words that I wrote throughout this year, not counting the 22,000 words I have on the Ivory Crypt. So I would say that's a pretty big accomplishment for me. Next up, I started a YouTube channel from the ground up. I went from 0 to almost 800 subscribers in 6 months. And technically I did that in 3 months because I went dark for about 2 months. So that's kind of crazy growth, and I can't wait to see where we get to in 2025. Lastly, I participated and won Camp Nano for the first time since July of 2020. And yeah, I met my goal, Camp Nano. Really enjoyed that little mini series of vlogs that I did for that whole month of July. I wrote about 34,000 words, I think it was, and I met my goal. And I also got a good chunk of quarter Rooks done. Now, moving on to what I wish I did better this year. I wish that I had been more consistent on YouTube, because while I am proud of the growth that I made, I feel like I could have made even more growth, because I've been seeing other AuthorTubers and their platform steadily rising, like Cody is writing, Brielle writes, Mick, all these people, and seeing you guys and your growth just makes me motivated to make videos and, try and get to your level, because I'm a pretty competitive person, and, I kind of want to be, one of those people that people mention on the AuthorTube space. I've got a long way to go till I'm, one of those guys, but yeah, seeing those guys and their success just makes me want to grind even harder. So that's going to be one of my goals for 2025, is to be more consistent on YouTube. I'm going to try for 1 video a week, or at least 1 video every 2 weeks. While I want to be consistent, I also want the quality of my videos to go up, because I feel like that's the one thing that I also could have done better this year, and that is make higher quality videos. I'm not sure if you guys can tell, but I did get a new camera. I got a Sony ZV-E10. Shout out to Brielle for the recommendation. And yeah, I'm just going to really try and up my quality, going to try different types of videos and stuff like that. But that's also one thing I wish I did better this year. Next up is be more consistent with writing and take less breaks, because while I took a break from YouTube, I also took a break from Quarter Rooks, and I almost was not able to submit my novel to a competition because I took such a long break. But that's one thing I'm also going to try and work on next year, is to just be more consistent with writing. I'm going to try and write every day, even if it's just 1 word, because I went a lot of days without writing last year. And had I wrote every day, even if it was just a couple of words every day, who knows how many words I could have wrote. And yeah, that's pretty much all the things that I wish I did better in 2024. Now, to recap, 2024 was a big year for me. It was marked by a lot of change, growth, and I just can't wait to see what I get up to in 2025. I would love to hear about your guys' 2024 wins and what you guys hope to get up to in 2025. So be sure to leave your 2024 wins and your 2025 goals in the comments below. I've got a lot of big things up on the horizon. I'm talking new stories, new videos, a Patreon, a website, all kinds of things I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about being more consistent on Instagram, just all kinds of things. So if you guys want to keep up with me, you guys can subscribe to this channel. You guys can follow me on Instagram. It's the same name as my YouTube. And yeah, that'll be it for me. I've been LDJ Writes, and I'm signing off for 2024. See you guys in 2025. Peace.